Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of The Empathic Leader, where we talk all things leadership, empathy, and emotional intelligence. And I am so excited to introduce our guest today. He's truly someone who's been a leader of one and a leader of many. And I think you're really going to enjoy his story. He's fascinating. So Dr. Phillip Agrios is a self-sabotage specialist, business consultant, best-selling author, and international speaker. You think he's done everything, just wait. He's also a retired board-certified sports chiropractor, as well as a retired functional medicine practitioner specializing in autoimmune disease. He practiced for over 35 years. Over the last 30 years of researching and working with thousands of people, he's uncovered what he calls the inborn sabotaging trait that we're all born with, and he's used that to build his T Now or Transcend Now method. His goal is to empower people to instantly switch off that trait, helping them transcend self-sabotage and achieve lasting success in both their personal and professional lives. And so that's part of what we talk about is being able to be in touch with yourself, to be able to have self-empathy and be able to lead better. I think this is going to be a really fascinating conversation for our audience. Since we do talk leadership, empathy, and EQ, I would like to point out that I believe Dr. Agrios is truly a leader of one, pulling his experience and expertise from his own debilitating health issues, financial ruin, and personal loss. He's let himself out of these struggles and now works to help others do the same. So please help me welcome Dr. Phillip Agrios. Hi, thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Melissa. I appreciate and it's an honor to be here.
Well, we're so happy to have you here too. So I would love to hear more, starting with what led you from being in being a chiropractor into where you are now. Because as someone else who's made a pivot that maybe doesn't play out very well on the goal map, I'm always interested to hear how other people got from point A to point G.
Yeah, interesting. Exactly. So I wasn't looking for this. This is kind of came up with me, and dealing with a lot of with myself, and back when I was just trying to figure out why was I successful and then I wouldn't be successful, or what were my children going through, and my patients and family and things like that. And I just started to realize something. And I first developed a particular blueprint that allowed me to see how behavior works. And it took me a long time to really understand what this was, because there's nothing like this in the world, and it's something totally different. And during that process, when I was working with chronically ill patients, I was able to really understand that there is a biological trait that actually causes us to self-sabotage. I know people think it's mindset and everything else, but when I first found this, that you can actually, once you understand this trait, we found a way to switch it off instantly, and it's at your control. So when I first found that, I was like, this is too simple. There's no way, right? And so I went out to try to disprove it. And over 30 years, researching thousands and thousands of people, not only was I able to prove it, I found a way to switch it off. And it's at any time you want it to be. So at that moment, the reason why we self-sabotage is because we're just causing ourselves in a protective mode. So what I call the inborn sabotaging trait, not using the word as sabotage, but actually as protecting us from the very success that we seek, because that success subconsciously is more painful to achieve and sustain. So we go back doing the same thing over and over again. So imagine knowing when you start to release your personal professional power and you hit that wall, that inborn sabotaging trait kicks in to protect you. There's nothing wrong with you. You're not an idiot or a loser, all the other hundreds of words we say to ourselves. You're just in protection. And imagine when you hit that wall, as you start to contract, knowing that there's only one trait that you were born with that is causing that protection. And then using what we call the T Now method, the exact opposite behavior, you will immediately go into growth. So now you're doing this instead of going into that hamster wheel over and over again.
Wow. And you found this, you obviously study human behavior closely, which, we're kindred spirits there, because that's what I do too. I think it's fascinating. And with all of the people that you've seen this consistently work time after time after time.
Yeah, what I found was that we are just made up of three basic traits. We call them the director, the supplier, and the communicator. So for your audience, you can write down the director, supplier, and communicator, because that's all we do as humans. We communicate, we supply each other, and then we direct, right? Take control of that.
Yeah.
Once I realized these three traits make up who we are, and this goes into looking at biology and quantum physics and everything else, I had to teach myself quantum physics to understand some of this. Then I realized there is actually a protective sequence. And that protective sequence is where you now place those three traits depending on how you were born. So what the sequence is made up is what we call your dominant trait. That's your superpower, right? That's why you're here on earth. It's your purpose. And then you have what's called a mediator trait, which is the bridge between your superpower and the inborn sabotaging trait. So look at it as a seesaw situation. So when we take those three traits and place them, it only comes up with 6 sequences of human behavior. So there's only 6 people in the world. So what we've got to the point of really scientifically understood each sequence and how each understood each other. Once I understand your sequence by asking you a few questions, I can tell you everything you've done in the past, why you did it, why you're doing it now, and why you'll continue to do it. If you had a significant other, I can ask you a few questions, tell you everything about them and never meet them, and then tell you how you two interact and never ask a question. So we get this down to the science of knowing why you're doing what you're doing at that moment. Why am I protecting myself? So what I would do is, for your audience, write down this sentence. When you feel stuck or frustrated or anything other than being in the flow, ask, why am I protecting myself at this moment? And that's all you're doing.
Wow. So it really does come back to human survival.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It comes down because there's only 2 things we do as humans. We protect, we grow, right? We contract, we expand, we give and take. So in that situation, it's just flipping it. So I cannot trust somebody and fear them at the same time, right? So if you see my hand, right, you can see my front hand, but can you see my back hand? No. But when I switch over to the back hand, can you see my front hand? No. So when you fear, you can't trust. But when you trust, you can't fear. They're both in you. It is up to you whether or not which one you want to tap into and for how long. So I don't care. You go into the corner or suck your thumb in a fetal position with a pillow and on the floor. I'm good with that. You're like, why is he good with that? Because that's just how you protect yourself. The problem comes is how long are you there for? So the inborn sabotaging trait brings adversity in your life so you can evolve. So when you're going through some tough stuff, get excited because you're ready to evolve. But we don't think that way. We're not taught that way. We don't feel that way. We don't take those actions. So we go into that contracted state trying to avoid that, not realizing we are on the verge of that. And then once we use the method, you can immediately, instantaneously go into growth and not self-sabotage. So when you use the T-Now method, it is impossible to self-sabotage yourself. But is self-sabotage important? Absolutely, because it's protecting you.
That would be tricky, actually. I mean, I know you said in the beginning that it's something that you can turn off easily. And it just seems really hard that it seems like it would be difficult to get rid of something that's so ingrained and so inherent to who we are in human survival and that sort of thing. Can you tell me a little more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So when people are in our programs, we give them a 9-question quiz and they get their inborn sabotaging trait and what we call the antidote. The antidote is the exact opposite to the saboteur. We've had people make major shifts within an hour and a half or a few days. We've had people come back going, I couldn't get some of this work done or whatever. I went through this, but you know what? I now understand why I did it, right? Or, oh, I knew I did that, but now I can grasp it and do something with it. So the reason why a lot of people can't shift it off, because number one, they don't know what the opposite behavior is, what to do and why they're doing it. Mm-hmm. And then you have all these other 2 traits working this way, because what happens is your superpower can trip you up. So for a leader, right? So those salespeople, you ever have a salesperson, they talk too much and they talk themselves out of a sale? You ever have that, right? Or
Yes.
know somebody?
Once or twice, yes.
Right. So I work with a lot of VPs of sales, and I would ask them, what would you do? And they would say, well, the majority of them say they need a communication training. I said, no, that's their baby. That's their superpower. The reason why they're over talking is because of the saboteur. They could be scattered all over the place, so they're overly, just throwing something on the wall. Hopefully, it'll stick, or they don't feel deserving, so they don't feel valued talking to that person. So they're overly talking to show how valuable they are, which is causing them not to be valuable, right?
Yeah.
So once they can understand that, and we use the antidote instantaneously, they can start communicating more effectively. We've had people go from 30% closing rates to 90% within a week, because they understood why they were over talking or overthinking or being too, worrying about everybody else type of thing. So once you understand how those three work together, it starts to really make this easier, where people come in and go, wow, I cannot believe how quickly things are shifting for me. Are they going to go back to the old them? Absolutely, because that's what they're used to. But now you know how to shift it faster than staying in there for a month. And now you're like, now your business is really going down. Now you're forcing yourself to kick in, compared to maybe a day you're having a problem with procrastination or over, you're scattered all over the place. But now you can shift that faster, because now you know what to do, and just focusing on just one thing.
Wow. Okay. So a lot of our listeners are executives, leaders, people that are bringing other people with them. So how do you see someone learning about this, being able to get a hold of this in themselves, how that would affect their leadership skills, how they would be able to, work better with other people, how they might be able to get over that leadership block that maybe's been holding them back?
Absolutely. So we have a lot of executives on in our courses. Mm-hmm. And one story I remember, where an executive was having problems with their employees. So first was, let's look at you. What are you doing? How are you creating this? And one of the things is that person wasn't really talking. He was more to himself. He would overthink things, and he would just give it out and thinking, well, it makes sense to me. But the way he was communicating and not communicating wasn't really connecting. So what we did was, once he understood how to communicate verbally and why he was uncomfortable doing the not communicating properly, he would then not overthink as much. Then he would then communicate more effectively with his employees, and the business started to rise immediately. I had a COO who overly gave. He had an open door policy. So those of you out there that have an open door policy, fantastic, but it's causing your business to drop and your efficiency to drop, because people are just going to come in and interrupt you. So with the COO, what we did was, he understood why he did that. We started putting and setting boundaries for him to help him to set up. He actually turned his whole desk towards the wall, put earphones on. We've had him put a thing, this is the only times you disturb me. And the business increased tremendously within a few, 2 or 3 months, because he was able to then set himself. The other thing is, imagine knowing each and every one of your staff's sequences. Now you'll know how to support them in the way they need to be supported, not in the way you think they need to be supported, which is really how you need to be supported. So once you can understand why that person's doing what they do, you can now go and sit with them. We see this with sales. I had a sales VP. One of the salespeople weren't doing a great job. She sat with him, go over things. She understood his sequence, and 2 things were going to happen. Was he was not going to get it, and he was not right for that position, or he was going to get it and he will increase his sales. Well, that particular person going through the process, she realized he wasn't the right one. She would have waited another 3-4 months trying to see if he was the right, but he wasn't. And she was able to let him go and then bring somebody else in to increase their sales. Other things is knowing that person. We've seen people increase their sales by the VP understanding what's keeping them stuck and then moving them forward pretty quickly.
So here's a question, something that I've run into a few times, where you go in to help people in leadership positions, that you're trying to help them to become the next best version of themselves, but they're very stuck in this is how I do things because this is how I do things. And this is how we've always done it. And they might be kind of hesitant to get a hold of something else, especially something that maybe is just very different from anything that they've done before. Have you had to work with clients that are maybe kind of initially hesitant to what you have to say? And if so, how have you brought them around?
So that's a great question. So the number one I've had where I was hired to go into a company, but the CEO was not going to be there. And I said, no, it's not going to happen. I sat with the CEO and I said, you need to do, and he wasn't doing it. And I'm not your person, because if I deal with everybody else and you're not there, it's going to create a problem. So I walked away. Okay. And was it bad for him? It was just how he was. He thought he was too busy and all that. With another company, another CEO wasn't doing it. And by sitting with him and then knowing his sequence, I was able to help him understand why he wasn't doing that and how by him being there would be a major plus for it. Once he was there, we shifted. We had 4 partners that they had a $60 million company and they were going to implode in 2 months. And when we sat together, they realized why they were so upset with each other. They made a lot of money and then things started dropping down. Once they understood each other's sequence and understood that there was no more judgment, but that's just how they were protecting themselves. Yeah. Then they started working together. Within 4.5 months, within 2.5 months, they saved $4.5 million. And now they're going into a much higher level. So the executive board, by understanding each other and why and how everybody's working, or your executive assistant or whatever, by understanding, you now have more empathy towards them instead of judgment, going, why are you not doing this? You're stupid or something? And the only reason is because there's saboteurs here, but that's your superpower. But they can say the same thing to you. They could have said the same thing to the other guy going, are you mute? Why can't you open your mouth and tell us what's going on, right? So we can all judge each other. But once you understand this whole sequence, now you understand they're just protecting themselves from each other.
So here's a behavior question then. Because a lot of times when we do things like that are subconscious, if we try to get around them, those behaviors will fight back subconsciously. Like, you're talking about this self-sabotaging trait. Do you ever find clients that have a hard time letting go of it? Like they're self-sabotaging, their self-sabotage. And maybe that's a good way to put it. I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Because it's ingrained. And that's why our program is in 1 day, right? Yeah. Once they have it and they come back and go, this didn't work. And I'm like, because this, and this, and they're like, yeah. So what can you do to start doing this? And now we're seeing people more effective. It may take them 1 or 2 months, but they're seeing slowly improvements on this, right? Do we have people that can shift pretty quickly and start, but it all depends upon what the situation is. For instance, if you had a little cut, right? And like a paper cut. Now, it came to me, would I tell you to let's put some stitches? No, you're just going to let it happen and it'll go away faster. But if you have a gash or from surgery, it's going to take longer to heal. So when you understand your saboteur and you're using your antidote, what happens is it all depends on the situation. There are situations you'll shift immediately. We've seen relationships between husband and wife quickly shift, or children, right? But now your business, you've put a gash in your business, is going to take some time and you have to stay more consistent and things like that. I was just talking to a CEO that's done very well, and we were talking to him. He goes, I still find myself procrastinating and all that. And I said, yeah, and because you're protecting yourself, because I see that I'm getting back faster. So he's doing it faster, but he's seeing as soon as he goes into that self-sabotage, he knows exactly what to do. And if he doesn't do it, then he realizes these are my results and then goes back into it. So like anything else, I do it myself. I've been doing this for 30 something years. I'll see, I may go into a certain situation, not wanting to do it. And then I have a choice. Do I want to get out of it now or come back to it in 4 hours and get to it? But now because I can see what I'm doing, why I'm protecting myself, because it's uncomfortable to do it. And how can I shift it with my antidote? And immediately I can get it done with the techniques and stuff that I've created for me that works for me. So that's why we have that program, so we can help people see it and understand it and get down to such simplicity. And that's why for 30 years, I'm like, this can't be this simple, but it is. It comes down to just one thing.
So I'm actually going to follow up on that a little bit, because we talk about being a leader of one, being able to lead yourself first before you can lead other people. And as you just said, this is something you developed on yourself. This is something that you started out with. I need to figure out what's going on with me. And then you start teaching and being able to lead others into this same system. Can you give us a little bit of background on how you stumbled onto this, or how you developed it, or how it suddenly appeared, or how it worked?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I went through a lot.
Yeah.
I always tell people, be careful that when you're open to finding something new, you have to go through some major stuff for this to come out. Yeah. So it all started from a false accusation from an insurance company. And 3 things were going to happen. I was going to jail for fraud. I was going to lose my chiropractic license, and I had to pay back 3 times what they told me that they paid me. And I said it was a false accusation. They could not prove anything. Nothing ever happened to me, never happened to my license. But I went through years of hell with the insurance companies and this and that. And then during that time, I became disabled. I couldn't practice. And my father was diagnosed with brain cancer. So he passed 7 months later. I became the primary caretaker of my ailing mother. She passed 7 years later, but through that problem, I was going through horrific divorce as well. I went through financial ruin. One of my daughters almost committed suicide, and I can keep on going. But all of it broke me down in order to slowly seeing, okay, how I'm reacting to this. And then I would look at things differently. And it was like something in me to compel me to shift it. And then I found this 6 sequences, the 6 blueprint steps of 6 steps of blueprint that shows how nature comes back from her storms. And I realized those 6 steps were within us that solves any business or personal problem. And as I go through it, and I realized that when I took those steps and I put them together, it came up with the 3 basic principles of the universe. So that's why we call it the directed supply and communicator. So it took 30 something years. This wasn't like a year and, let me get this going. It took 30 years to develop it, and going through with thousands of people, with my patients and my family and myself. So it took a long time to develop it. And that's why I left my practice 3 years ago to do this full time.
Wow. I think that's a really good point too, that, these flashes of insight will come and things will get better, but it's not an overnight thing. And that's just
Yeah, and I was using it with my chronically ill patients, because we found out that they would come to me and, you're going to kill me. I had a pizza, and I'm like, yeah, so what happened? I said, how many days of pain were you in? I'm like, 4. I said, I'm glad you had the pizza. It kind of reinforces to make sure you know that. But I'm more curious what happened prior to that caused you to have a situation where you use your numbing agent, eating, drinking, stress, whatever the case may be. And what we found out, they were using their saboteur. Once we gave them the T-Now method, we found 2 things happened. They lessened their numbing agents, or they stopped them. So they weren't having their flare-ups as much. They were able to take control of their stress, so the body didn't react. And then I started hearing from my patients who were business owners were making major breakthroughs in their business. I never thought about using it in a business. And then I started using it, and they started making major breakthroughs. And then I started getting referrals all around the world. I wrote my book, and finally, after I felt that it was time that I have this program and this product that I can help millions with it. So it was time to get out of the office, shift here, and tell the world. And that's my why.
Wow.
That's why I didn't retire.
Yeah, well, but that's good. I mean, obviously you still had a job to do.
I'm going to go until I drop. That's how passionate, because I have a really strong responsibility. I was given something no one else has. I mean, this is totally different stuff. This is not like DISC or any of the other things. Because like DISC and Myers-Briggs, you got to take the test once a year to kind of things shift. Once you know your sequence, this never changes. You were born with this. So I feel this huge responsibility that I need to get this out to the world and help people. And it's been an interesting journey, and that's why we're doing here, and being honored to be here to tell my story and tell what we have.
Well, and I appreciate you being here very much. I mean, best-selling author, international speaker, you're getting your word out far and wide, and we did have the opportunity to get to chat a little bit before this, and you're very passionate about what you do, and I think that's fantastic. If you have a message to get it out as far and wide as you can. So, big props.
No, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, this goes deeper. I mean, we found two base fears of each person has two base fears. We found the one subconscious word they use to stop all their goals. Your own business, and the executives that are listening to this, your own business has its own inborn sabotage and traded antidote. It's like a living human being. So what happens is that we show them how their saboteur and their employees enhance the business is saboteur. And by using the method, then we've seen major shifts in businesses. And that was one of the things we did with that $60 million company, where their other VPs and understood why they were doing and understood they were focusing on the wrong part of their business. They were focusing on the superpower of the business instead of the saboteur of the business. And as soon as they did that, that's when things started to really shift.
Oh, okay. So here's a question for you then, because on your website, it says you work primarily with executives, business people, and entrepreneurs. Are there any other?
Yeah. And salespeople, yes. That we focus on that for people that are for our higher executive program, coaching program, which we have we guarantee results, and we actually have a money back guarantee on that. That's how confident we are with this. But I just created a membership site where we have people, whether or not they're children and their spouses or other people that are not in that realm, in that end of it, we do have that. And then I also go into companies and corporations, and I can do a 4 to an 8 hour course. I just did one for the Army because I work a lot with veterans and PTSD. This works really, really well with PTSD. We just had a high-ranking CEO who had 12 tours. And in the first 3 weeks, he was able to go dancing with his wife. So, we had another brain injury, and he would snap at his, with his child and with his wife, and his business would create a problem. And within the first week, by using the method, he was able to thwart 2 major episodes, and he was just blown away by it. So, yeah, this goes into many different aspects from marriages, because it's not only your professional life, you got to focus your personal, because they're one.
Yeah.
So your saboteur affects both of them at the same time. When you use your antidote, both are affected. So we look at also the person's personal life and what's going on in there, and what's happening in their personal life is exactly what's happening in their professional life, coming down to just this one trait.
Wow, that is powerful stuff. Very powerful stuff.
It gets to a point of being unbelievable. I had a marketer one time told me, he goes, you shouldn't say it works 100% of the time. You should say like 97%. And I said, why do I going to lie to these people? I said, if people don't believe that, that's just their saboteur protecting them from me, because they're seeing me from somebody who hurt them before. Maybe they had a coach and they said these great things and nothing ever happened. I said, but that's why we take in our executive course, it's a 2-day process. Because you have money and you breathe doesn't mean you get into the program. I'm very protective of the program. We want to make sure, are they fully for this, and what can we guarantee them? And if we both agree, then they're allowed into the program.
Which is fantastic, because you're helping the people that you can help, and not worrying about maybe the people that don't want to be helped, because there are those that are just not quite ready.
And they're just protecting themselves. They don't know that. They're
Right.
just protecting. And that's why we have the membership site where people can start going in and, getting a little bit of information, and then they can come to the higher end. But yeah, so we have conversations with executives and sales professionals. Those of you who are leader or sales professionals, imagine talking to a potential client and then knowing their sequence by just talking to them, knowing exactly why they're resisting you, and then how you can guide them to your product and service if that product and service is for them. Karma's a bitch. Okay, so we make sure it's all integrity based, right? Yes. So, but again, imagine now you're helping more people, impacting more people, because when you don't sell, when you don't close, it's your inborn sabotaging trait stopping you, because it's more painful to close that person. And we prove that all the time.
This has been fascinating, Phil. Thank you so much. I have one last question for you that we wrap up on.
Sure.
And I ask this of everybody. So if you can think of one leader, mentor, somebody like that, either alive or dead, known or unknown, doesn't have to be famous, that has influenced you and how you've lived your life, who would it be and why?
Wow. Never had that question before. I've had, I've never had a mentor. And people ask that. I've never had a mentor. These 33 years, what's been really focusing is on my work. Help me, guide me to realize it. But different spiritual, like the first book that I ever read that caused me to go from a crappy car to a great car within a couple of 2-3 months was The Magic of Thinking Big by Schwartz. I forgot his first name. Mm-hmm. And that was my first interview. My first, I'm blanking on a name, experience with understanding that I had control over my life. But the other one too would be Earl Nightingale, right? The grandfather of motivational speaking. And one of his quotes, I love his quotes, he says, "There's no such thing as luck. Luck is when opportunity meets preparedness, and opportunity is always there." So I remember listening to Earl Nightingale through the 80s, and, Robbins and Rowe and Zig and all those guys. But in the early parts, that was the book, and Earl Nightingale was a major contributor to that as well.
Wow, great answer. Thank you.
Good.
No, that's fantastic. I mean, it's more about getting to know you as a person and understanding some of your influence than anything. So, I hope it wasn't too out of left field. Just
oh no, I love it. I love being put on the spot. You kidding me? Yeah. If I don't know it, I'll make something up. It'll sound really good. No, I'm kidding. I like to mess around. But yeah, that's great. Great question. I love that. I got to really think about that. But I think that's comes down to my heart of that would be the two answers I would give.
Cool. Well, those are fantastic. And that's what we want, our answers from the heart, because that tends to guide the mind often. So, I just want to thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was going to say something else. I was going to say, so one of the things we found is that we've been taught about mindset, right? Mm-hmm. What we found was only 1/3 of the population needs mindset. The other 2 needs feel set or heart set. A lot of people have too much overthinking. They don't need the mindset. So depending on the saboteur, there's only 3 saboteurs in the world. One governs the brain and the mindset. The other one governs your heart and your actions. And the other one governs your gut and your feelings. So if people are doing one thing over and over and they just can't understand why they can't move forward, they're focusing on the wrong trait. They're not going into that antidote. Because I realized I took all the grades, and I found out that I realized that my dominant trait and my mediator trait were they were general information. It wasn't specific to me. And I would use it on these traits because subconsciously it was easier. But once in a while, it would hit my antidote without me knowing it. And I would then become successful. But because I didn't know why that happened, I would lose that success. So now understanding their antidote, it is the reason why we repeat our success over and over again. So those of you who are using all mind, you got to focus on your heart and your gut, and vice versa. Those are all about gut. You got to look at the other three and how they harmoniously work together with each other to keep you balanced.
So it's about holistic integration of everything. It's a total self.
Of all three traits, exactly.
Yeah. Wow. Phil, this has been fantastic. I really appreciate you being on with us today. Thank you.
Oh, I had a blast. Thank you so much. I hope this was valuable for you and your audience.
Absolutely. I'm certain it is. And we appreciate it very much. And to everybody in my audience, please check out Dr. Agrios' website, everything that he has going on the internet. Do you want to talk about anything that you have coming up or how people can find you?
Yeah, I'm all over social media. Since your audience is what we focus on, I do have a 30-minute free consult. So you can go to tnowmasterclass.com. That's tnowmasterclass.com. You can watch a 12-minute video. It goes a little more deeper of what I said more about today. And then if you want to have a discovery call, we have a conversation. You cannot buy anything that day. We just have a conversation. If we feel this is right for you, then we go to the next level. If not, then we part as friends and we move forward. So that's what we can offer for your leadership audience, to really help them to understand why they get stuck, or they could be a multimillionaire and they can't get to the next level. It's because of this just one trait. Prove it, see it all the time, never fails.
Perfect. Awesome. All right, everybody, please go and check Dr. Phil Agrios out. And as always, thank you so much for listening in again. Please remember to comment, like, and subscribe. And we will see you next week, where we will talk about all things leadership, empathy, and emotional intelligence.